Welcome to Wisdom for Nonprofits, bringing the best business wisdom to the nonprofit world. Proven leaders share their experience, insights, and best practices. Finally, a podcast for the busy nonprofit professional. And now, your trusted advisor, Bettina Meyer-Flug.
You might be looking to enter the nonprofit world from one of many different starting points. Maybe you're fresh out of college and eager to change the world. Maybe you're mid-career and hoping for a change. Maybe you're a parent looking for a workplace that offers a great life balance, or a near retire hoping to spend your last working years doing something meaningful. Whatever your life path, you might have noticed there is a lot of conflict advice out there about working for a nonprofit or a foundation. In this episode, we will answer a few common questions about finding the perfect nonprofit job, including: is nonprofit work right for you? What skills do you need to succeed at a nonprofit? What directions should you take? Do the pros for a nonprofit career path outweigh the cons? Where can you learn more about each type of role inside a nonprofit? Plus, I've asked some nonprofit career experts for advice on these ins and outs of finding the nonprofit career path that's right for you. Are you ready? Let's dive in. To help me with this mission, I have invited again to our podcast Krista Ortega. We have recorded another podcast called How to Diversify Your Revenue with Individual Donors. The tips that she gave on that episode are amazing. You should check it out. Krista is an innovative social sector strategist and an educator with over 19 years of diverse professional experience with nonprofit organizations from San Diego to New York City. Current Krista works as a program manager at Candid and delivers over 60 in-person and online trainings annually in the Western region and all across the United States. She also contributes to the learning strategy, curriculum design, and program evaluation efforts, serve as a subject matter expert. She is capable of teach leaders of the third sector, fundraising strategies for individual giving, and much more. Her biggest passion is to make the world a better place. That's why she's here again with me. Thank you, Krista. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me back. What a pleasure.
We would like to start talking a little bit about the advantages of working for a nonprofit. What are your points of view on this topic?
It's such a good conversation. Thank you so much for hosting this and providing this dialogue for nonprofits. I'll kind of start by saying this is just my experience. And while I was thinking about, wow, 19 years, that's not a short amount of experience. It's also just one person's lived experience. So hopefully these amazing questions that you're asking me today will also inspire folks to ask others in this sector these questions as well. And I think that's actually one of the biggest benefits is the people, really. The best advantage is you meet the most amazing people that have missions and passions to affect and change the world, to strengthen their communities, and to bring their expertise to really important missions and visions. I think I've been grateful for mentorship, meeting other people. I think one of the other advantages in working in nonprofits is it's very diverse. So when we think of one nonprofit, it's hard to completely compare and contrast. Most of my experience has been in smaller nonprofits. So for me, the advantage has been that I've learned so many different skills working in smaller nonprofits. Sometimes that tips into one of the disadvantages because resources can be a little limited, but the opportunity is so much greater. Back to your, kind of guiding question around wearing so many different hats, trying out different roles, working in different departments and learning. some of the ways that I've learned the most in my career has been by doing. Oh, I'll do that, or volunteering to take on, new projects, or saying you want to grow and develop within an organization, and having a career path plan so that you can learn more. So I feel like anyone that works in a nonprofit for a little bit of time, frankly, is ready to work in any industry because they're resourceful, they can wear many hats, and they're great learners. So those are some of the quick advantages that I think brings me and keeps me working in this sector.
Yeah, I agree with you. Perhaps the biggest and the most obvious advantage many experts from working in the nonprofit world is the sense of this personal fulfillment experience from contributing to making a positive and difference in this world. But I will say here I have some topics that are advantage of working, and one of them is eternal life. So nonprofit organizations they can exist long after their founders leave the organization. If their purpose stays relevant to the community, they can continue, and that's amazing. The oldest company in the world, the oldest nonprofit, was founded around 1500.
Wow.
So it's totally possible to have a long lasting corporate life. Another thing, you can create your own nonprofit. If you're passionate about some topic that you think it's really relevant, you can create your own organization. And the best part is that you have protection from your personal liability. That means employees from nonprofit are not personally liable for the debts of the nonprofit. That's a good point.
It
Tax
is.
exempt status and net income. So nonprofits do not pay taxes, so all the earnings can be cycled back into the organization to improve it.
Yep.
Public and private incentive to help out. So you can have donations from individuals, from corporations. It's not easy, but it's possible to fundraising with different resources. That's what we were talking in our previous podcast. You have grant eligibility, so you can bring additional resources to your foundation or to your nonprofit to government grants. That's really good. Employee benefits. If your nonprofit has enough employees, you might qualify for a group discount to health or insurance benefits programs. So there is a nonprofit association here in Colorado that really can help your nonprofit bring a lot of benefits to your organization. The volunteer board members, they don't get paid, and they are amazing professionals who help your organization to thrive. So if you want to try it out as well, maybe a starting point could be to start as a board member. And you have highly motivated employees. Research shows that nonprofit employees are highly motivated by instincts rewards like achievement of their clients or good work-life balance rather than the pay. So it's a good environment. I can tell you, I know more than 300 nonprofits that already talk here in the area, and everybody who works for them, they love it. Krista, can you tell us the disadvantage that you see of working for a nonprofit?
I know. I'm like, after all those amazing benefits, and I would agree with a lot of those. And then I'm also like, again, lived experience. You may have had an experience where it wasn't the right fit for you. So I think the most important thing is to think about culture. And you really gave so many great examples of what exists in some of the benefits, but you have to know yourself. So part of your career is taking on new opportunities. Again, that's the advantage. And then using them as lessons learned. So really finding an organization that has a mission and or a culture that really is a good fit for you. And knowing what that is in advance can help you kind of interview for your job just as much for you as it is for the organization, right? Finding a fit, I think, continues to be more and more important. And I think the other thing that I I like that is growing, but can kind of seem as a disadvantage. I think there's a perception that we don't get paid as much, as you were talking about some of the benefits. And yeah, I've experienced that. I think that's true. My friends that are not in the nonprofit, that are in the for-profit or governmental sectors, I would say are definitely always paid better than I have been in my career. So we have to find the benefits, like you were saying, to kind of outweigh that. And I think culture and who you're working with, and ultimately what impact you're having on the mission, should be something that you're, negotiating or seeking out. And at the same time, I think it's I see it as an exciting time in our sector where we've advocated to kind of professionalize this work a little more, through professional development, through continuing education. I mean, there's not only master's and bachelor's degrees in nonprofit management and sectors of leading a nonprofit, but there are now PhDs. And I think that that's professionalizing the sector more. And therefore, we should be paying staff that have expertise, that are growing, and that have higher education. Equitable wage, I would say, is the kind of conversation on the table. So just because there's benefits and just because you love the mission doesn't mean that you should take less pay than what is equitable to be able to live in your community and thrive. Frankly, we should be really, as an organization and a sector, wanting our employees to thrive beyond just survive and slide by. So it can be a disadvantage. And yet I see more and more companies and organizations really talking to funders and their constituents about how important it is to invest in their employees for retention purposes, for, like you were saying, benefits and engagement, and for the longevity, truly, of the work that the organization is set out to do, and also the people that are dedicating their careers for it. So I say that as a woman too, or anyone that needs to advocate a little more for yourself. Like, that's one of the lessons I've learned along the way is you want to feel really good, like you said, about the work that you're doing and going to work every day. And it's okay to advocate for yourself as well.
I agree with you. I think whenever you're thinking on starting your own nonprofit, you have to be aware that you need time and money to start. It will take at least a few months to be up and running, and you need money to fund your organization at the beginning before you find the potential donors and all the structure to move on. So you have to have this commitment. So it's not that easy. And there is a continued maintenance. So every year you have to file a lot of documents, annual filings. So it's very important for you to be aware there's a lot of work around it. And there is no security on the nonprofit world. Whenever you create your own, you really have to dig into fundraising to be able to be established. You can count on volunteers, but it's not that easy because it's different than having employees and having volunteers working for your organization. So you have to have good skills of volunteer management to be able to keep all those volunteers around your organization. Funding can be difficult. Krista, if you can talk a little bit about fundraising ideas. It's not easy. You have to cover at least the cost of your organization and be sure that you have enough to maintain the employees. Is not easy. That's why sometimes nonprofit employees get paid less because of the fluctuation of income for the nonprofit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great topic. And I love the way you're framing it around an opportunity for folks to kind of enter the sector in different ways. We have a really great tool at Candid, and it's called Is Starting a Nonprofit Right for You? And it kind of walks you through a series of questions to see where you are in either readiness for starting it or to just kind of figure out if it's right for you, really. Because from my perspective, after being in this sector for a while, I would say it's the hardest business to start. And it's because there are so many important factors, like you just described, that go into it. I have a LLC business with my husband, and it is not easy to run an LLC in California. And yet at the same time, I think about, wow, it is so much harder to make sure that you have a successful and sustainable nonprofit. And really, the reason is because you are getting a tax deduction and benefit for doing public good from the IRS. And therefore, we have to make sure that people are using that benefit fairly and appropriately. And therefore, there are more things that are involved, like a board of directors that is critical. And each state has different laws around what that looks like. For example, I know in California, they passed a law just a few years ago that you need to have a financial officer on your board. They don't need to be a CPA, but what it says is you need to have these resources to be able to ensure that you're managing the public's dollars effectively because you're getting all these tax benefits. I think the other misconception that folks think is that if I start a nonprofit, the grant money just flows right in. And I hear that a lot from like my friends that want to start really, good initiatives, and there's tons of purpose behind it. But just because you have a quote unquote nonprofit or a 501c3 status does not mean that money naturally comes to you. You have to be a fundraiser. And it's competitive out there in a way that any business sector is. There's a lot of nonprofits. One of our tools at Candid is called GuideStar. And it's basically a database of all of the nonprofits in the US. So I urge everyone to go into GuideStar. You can get a free account, whether you work at a nonprofit or not, and look around, poke around. I think the latest number is there's around 1.8 million nonprofits just in the US. And I just ran the numbers yesterday, and there's over 300,000 just in the state of California. So there's a lot of nonprofits already. Okay.
Instead of starting a brand new one, why not look of what is already available over there and try to volunteer, see if the service that you want to offer overlap with what is offering already? That's a great
Exactly. It's not to say that you don't have a brilliant new way of solving, a really important community problem. But part of this assessment that I urge you to take on Candid's website, or even just the process that you're going through as you're essentially needing to write a business plan, like any business. But what's the mission and what's the business, and do some research and see if anyone else is already doing this. It will help you to interview other CEOs or founders and other staff that work in other organizations similar, to also learn before you go ahead and start it, because it is a lot. And like you said, you really need to be a good fundraiser. The money doesn't come in. You get a 501c3 status, and then they're like, okay, well, good luck. And you have to compete with all the fundraisers like myself that have, learned along the way and have taken classes and have gotten a master's degree and are professionals. So I think it's a good thing that the sector has grown and continues to get professionalized, but it's also something, if you're coming into it either as a new professional or wanting to start something, it's also something to be mindful of. You kind of do your homework. I say that when I'm saying fundraise, if you're going to go out and fundraise and you have a new nonprofit and you're listening, do your homework. And if you're considering joining an organization, do your homework. And if you're considering starting an organization, do your homework. So there's one more tool at Candid that I think can help with doing your homework, and that's Foundation Directory. So we also have, it's a subscription product, but there are free versions available within your community. And we've got a whole bunch of partners around the country and frankly around the world that help make these tools available to folks. And what it is it's an application that has all grant history and data in one place. So when you are starting out, or for folks that are looking to expand and kind of grow their fundraising, you can go in and look at all the history of foundations. You can see how much the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation gave in 2020 back to whenever they started. And that'll give you a really good sense of where the money is, where it goes, where they fund, where all the organizations they fund, and to help you make a better fundraising plan for your organization.
Thank you. I love all your tips. And the question I want to answer is nonprofit work right for me? So, just to recap, are you ready for the bureaucracy around nonprofits? There is a lot, sometimes lower pay. And one of the things that I think it's difficult for some people, not from me. I'm from Brazil and we are really used to work with limited resources, but whenever you're working for a nonprofit, you have to be aware that sometimes the resources are going to be limited. So are you ready to wear different hats? Like you said, Krista, sometimes they don't have a volunteer manager and you're the one that's going to be managing that event. So you have to be ready to wear different hats all the time. And sometimes it's overwhelming, this sense of responsibility, because people are depending on you. So it's not easy. You have to be strong. You have to be taking care of yourself emotionally, physically, to be able to keep up with your work. So get ready. If you like to do different things, wearing different hats, as you said, it's an amazing opportunity to learn new skills. You're not closed in a box, like doing the same thing every day. If you like innovation, if you like to learn things new every day, that's the best part of the work.
I completely agree. And I think that's why small nonprofits was the right fit for me, because I have an entrepreneurial side of me, which is why I ended up starting a business with my husband along the way as well. And being in a nonprofit allows you, to me, I see it as the advantage to take on new projects. I think it excelled my leadership capabilities because I had to take on different projects and, like you said, be responsible to not only our members or constituents, but the public that was funding us, right? If you think about all the donors and all the foundations, these are folks that are counting on you to deliver, good results for the community that you're serving. So it really has tons of advantage, but I would say you're right. You have to really be kind of think through and be mindful and do your research. The other thing I was going to share about figuring out if working for a nonprofit is right for you is Candid also puts out an annual compensation survey, and it's a report that everyone that works in the sector gets an opportunity to complete. I was like, when I said that, I was like, I'm not exactly sure how they do that. It's pretty amazing, but it's coming from real folks and real-time data on what folks are making that they report anonymously. So what it says is the different roles within the nonprofits and the different types of organizations and their size and what folks are making. So that's a really also a great tool as you're thinking about either coming into the career to see if it's right for you, or if you're looking to grow within a career. And sometimes the size of the organization, like the actual annual operating budget, does change how much folks are getting paid, but also different roles. I think I started in programs. It's funny about my career. I started doing programming and events and activities like that. And then I moved into fundraising for many years and was an executive director, which I really loved, because not only do you get to be in charge of fundraising, but you have to kind of think of employees and finances and operations of the organization, working with the board. So it was a fun job for me. And now I'm kind of back on the programming side, but I get to share my expertise with everyone. I'm on a training and program staff where we get to talk and share and teach about all of these important aspects. And so it's really important to kind of think about where you want to go, have a career goal, and do your homework. Mentorship too. I think that's huge if you're not sure, or you might want to pivot your career. It's mentorship is such an important tool and value, and everyone's really open. It's the people are so nice in this sector. So if you're not sure, you can call someone like me or someone that you know that works in a nonprofit and have a conversation and ask these important questions before you decide to move your career.
Yeah, what are the skills in your point of view that are important to work for a nonprofit?
I would say communication is top. Just even applying for a job at this point, you have to be able to kind of communicate yourself first on, I was going to say on paper, but that's how we would say it, but electronically through email, maybe even Zoom, right? It's a whole new skill to be able to interview virtually and be able to communicate, kind of your why. That's a great exercise. Why do you want to work in this sector? And ask yourself that question and be able to answer it. Why do you want to work at this job? What is it that you're looking to accomplish in this work, and really know your story so that you can kind of tell your story written and also tell your story verbally. And then I would say beyond that, an eagerness to learn. I'm a teacher. I teach all my experiences now, and yet I've never stopped wanting to learn. I love learning. Just this opportunity to be with you, I'm learning stuff about your experiences. So that eagerness to learn really, I think, goes far in a nonprofit job, because again, you can come in and have all the skills that you have, but things might be different. They might be different at this organization compared to the next one, or COVID happens and you have to figure out how to, solve a different problem to meet the goal. So having that kind of curiosity and that sense of learning, I think is a really great skill that I see folks growing their careers by, always having that sense of wanting to grow.
I totally agree with you, Krista. And I've been working with Salesforce for a long time, and Salesforce has a whole system for nonprofits. And the way they divide the structure of the organizations is you have a big chunk of the organization focus on program management. So if you have skills and in organizing and delivering programs that you are passionate about it, so you can go for program management. The second big pillar from a nonprofit is fundraising, so bringing the money in. And the third one is volunteer management, because big part of a workforce are volunteers. And to make everything run, here are some skills that are really important for you to have. The desire to help people is one of them. Getting along with different type of people, because you really interact with different type of people all the time. Self-motivation, it's very important. Good reading and verbal communication skills, because you really need to interact. And able to multitask, what we said, a different hats every day. So those are the essential skills for you to really thrive in this world. And I would like to explain a little bit about the different areas. So if you like different type of work, it's totally possible for you to feel fulfilled in a nonprofit, because nonprofits can work in different areas like education, health, international, legal, social service, international aid. Any other ideas, Krista? You know a lot on Candid. What type of
Yeah,
organization exists over there?
totally. I mean, arts organizations, that has a whole different skill and really fun sector to be in. Youth development, after school programs, YMCAs, anything that involves youth, animals and animal welfare
Oh,
is
I
a
love those
huge
ones.
area. Yeah, I know. And like you'll see in certain areas, for example, in Puerto Rico, a bunch of nonprofits got started around animal welfare after the hurricane, because there was so many animals to save, and in other countries and other parts of our country as well. So saving animals and taking care of animals is a big business. Zoos, if you can think about that. And beyond that, into cultural organizations, museums. Museums are I always had this kind of I want to work in a museum one day. Maybe I still will. And you think about all those kind of institutions that welcome the public in that are also nonprofits. And sometimes universities, hospitals, I'm trying to think other types of schools. It is so diverse. I completely agree. There's so much that you can do. Environmental organizations. It's kind of endless when you think about what kind of impact do I want to have on the community? And some of them might be even more micro to that. I just met someone from a community foundation in Minneapolis that was doing some really exciting kind of community healing work after the murder of George Floyd. And so there's just so many, as we move forward in our life, and unfortunately, sometimes it's out of challenge and trauma and issues within our community that we want to solve. There's just so many ways to get involved. Either, I agree with you, starting as a volunteer is such a good step. And actually, that's another tip that I have for just growing your career too, no matter where you are. I've always had a volunteer role in some other aspect beyond my job. So I say that because I think it's important to have a passion for your organization that you work at, but it is still your job. It's your career. You're getting paid. There's a professionalism to it. And it's okay to kind of stay focused on building your career and taking care of whatever that is, your rent and your household. And volunteering gets to kind of help you build skills in a different way, but also connect with the community on a different level when you have to like show up as an employee. You get to show up as a volunteer. And so that's one way that I've really grown my career. I wanted to learn more about grant making. So I volunteered on committees where I got to read grant proposals and help make funding decisions. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of dip your toe in and experience our sector and the different diverse places that you might want to be involved in, kind of on a lower risk level. And for me, sometimes more passionate. Because I always say this in the work that I do in my community, I don't have to show up as Krista, this role representing this organization. I can show up to community meetings as Krista, the resident of this community, and feel like I can be a little more, fluid or open with how I interact as a volunteer because I'm not representing my organization's goals.
I agree. Talking about schools, what type of degree is required? I know that most positions require a bachelor degree at minimum, but what are the non-profit specific degrees that are required to work for a nonprofit in your point of view?
It's an exciting question because I feel like I've seen this answer grow in the last 20 years that I've been in the sector. When I first wanted to work in nonprofits, there really wasn't a bachelor's degree. And if there was, I didn't know about it. I have a bachelor's in theater direction and a minor in education. I thought I wanted to be a high school theater teacher, and I did my student teaching there. So theater really is what brought me into the kind of nonprofit sector because I was a youth involved in theater programs. And I realized very young that the only way that was going to happen for us to do all these plays is, my parents had to volunteer, they had to donate stuff, and we had to fundraise. So I think as I grew and I realized, okay, maybe, teaching in the school isn't right for me, but I want to be working in nonprofits. That's when I realized that I wanted to reinvest my education. I found a master's degree program in nonprofit management around 2005. And since then, so many more programs have emerged. Bachelor's degrees in nonprofit management or leadership or even fundraising and philanthropy. Like I said, I've seen even PhDs specifically focus on philanthropy and fundraising. So things are growing in the, kind of continuing education, higher education space. But I wouldn't say if you're starting out that you necessarily need a degree in nonprofit management. It really depends on what area in the nonprofit you want to work. If you want to work in programs where you get to kind of run the activities that serve the mission, then any kind of degree in communications, marketing is a huge value for any nonprofit. Technology is something that we all need more information on. But there's also the whole other side of the nonprofit that is, the financials and running the operations of the organization. There's HR. So all of those specialties, leadership, all of those specialties, just like in any business we have in the nonprofit sector. So you might get a finance degree and decide that you want to use your expertise and skills to support a nonprofit. So yeah, I think, again, tons of variety. we at Candid have, I would say, kind of more in the professional development side of learning. So it's a good way to start learning different skills without committing to like a matriculated bachelor's or master's degree program. It's continuing education at any level. And we have a lot of beginner, intermediate, and advanced courses on a lot of these topics, mostly focused on fundraising, but a lot of topics. So we've got everything online. You can go to learning.candid.org and peruse the calendar, webinars that are free sometimes. And that just starts to get you kind of like, okay, what area do I want to go in and what area do I want to learn more about?
Thank you. I will mention here 4 degrees that are non-specific but not limited. A master's in public administration, it's can be useful. A master in social work, a master in public policy, and business administrations are the basics. But I did some research, and one college that I really admire, it's Cornell, and they have 4 courses for nonprofit professionals: strategic governing the organization, fundraising and revenue generation, determine appropriate budgeting, debt, financing and cash flow, and assessing nonprofit using financial statements and ratios. So as you said, financial, it's really key for nonprofits. And another option, if you want to go to the technology, like Krista said, Salesforce offer a online platform that's free. It's called Trailhead. You can study over there to take your admin certification. Admin certification is the basic one. And afterwards, you can study to become a nonprofit professional. And the salaries are huge. They start with 75,000 a year if you're an IT specialist with Salesforce knowledge to work for a nonprofit. I highly recommend you to take a look. Trailhead, just Google Trailhead Salesforce, and you can create an account for free. That's huge.
Huge. And I think you really brought up a great point too, Bettina, that you can be a part of the sector in a lot of different ways. So for example, working for Salesforce, a really amazing company that has a whole part of their organization dedicated to products just for nonprofits. So I think we're also in a cool time that we are working together more. And that would be the goal that I'd like to see as we work together even more across sectors. Governmental entities are always working in tandem with the nonprofit sector or the third sector. Small businesses and other businesses are such an important part, and even large corporations have, if a large corporation doesn't have a nonprofit or a community initiative, that would surprise me today. So there's a lot of different ways that you can be a part of the sector or be a part of building a community within your career that I think is wide open right now. And with technology, the best that it's ever been, obviously, in our world, there's just so much creativity and innovation, and folks that are kind of wondering how they want to give back. You have better, more creative ideas than I probably do, because you're thinking about it from a new and fresh and innovative perspective. So use your skills for good.
Yes, I have here 4 websites that I would like to share with you, and this will be on the description of the podcast. Those are websites where you can find jobs specific for nonprofits. The first one, it's called idealist.org. The second one is devex.com, devex.com. The third one is reliefweb.int from international. And the last one is unjobs.org. I will put this on the description of the podcast, but those are 4 amazing websites where you can search for jobs in this area.
Can I add one more to the list, Bettina?
Of course.
We have one at Candid called Philanthropy News Digest Jobs. And so it's a whole Philanthropy News Digest is a whole online publication that we have a whole team that really creates some amazing articles and kind of up to date. That's another way I was going to say to keep you up to date is to read this digest. But also there's a whole jobs place and page on there that you can search as well.
Thank
So
you.
now
I
you've
will
got
put you on
5
the
amazing
description.
websites.
So there are a bunch of links that Krista has shared with me. I will put on the description of the podcast, all the trainings and everything. If you want to learn more about the work that she's doing, please connect with Krista on her LinkedIn. Is linkedin.com/in from LinkedIn, Krista F. Berry. And I'll put on the description of the podcast. And if you are a nonprofit professional and wants to have like mentoring or coaching in this area, I'm more than happy to learn more about you. Just go on my website, witty.tech, on how it works, and you can schedule a 90-minute strategic coaching session with me. Krista, thank you so much for being again with me. I hope this information will be shared around the world with potential nonprofit professionals. And I hope to see you again, Krista. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom for Nonprofits. To hear past and future episodes, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast channel. We appreciate your reviews and suggestions for future show topics. If you have a question or a suggestion, please write to us at podcast@wity.tech. More resources are available for you at our website, wity.tech. And please join us in the Wisdom for Nonprofits group on LinkedIn. Wisdom for Nonprofits is copyright 2019 by Bettina Meyer-Flug and wity.tech. All rights reserved.